Imagine raising a baby as your own for 10 years, loving them like they were your own flesh and blood, only for the person who abandoned them, your own sister, to show up and try to take them away. That's my reality. Stay with me through this story, because it's one that changed my life forever. It all started a decade ago. I was 18 in college, sharing a tiny apartment and barely making enough to cover rent. My sister Rachel was 20, wild and unpredictable, always chasing something new. One evening, she showed up at my door holding a tiny bundle. Her eyes were red from crying, and her voice was shaky. She told me she just needed a week to get her life together, and begged me to watch her newborn daughter, Lily. I had never held a baby before. I didn't even know how to change a diaper. But when I looked down at that tiny face, her little fists waving in the air, I felt something I couldn't explain. It wasn't just responsibility. It was a fierce, sudden need to protect her. I told Rachel she could trust me. She kissed Lily's forehead, handed her to me, and left. That night was the longest night of my life. Lily cried for hours, and I had no idea what to do. I rocked her, sang to her, warmed bottles, and paced the floor until my legs ached. Every time she cried, my heart twisted. Somewhere between those cries and her small moments of quiet, I realized I would do anything. The week passed, then 2 weeks. I tried calling Rachel, but her phone was disconnected. I emailed her, messaged her, even contacted old friends of hers. Nothing. She had vanished. I went from being a college student with big dreams to being a full-time caregiver overnight. My professors noticed my absences. My grades dropped. Eventually, I had to make a choice: school or Lily. I chose Lily. I picked up extra shifts at my part-time job, sometimes working until my eyes burned, but I never let Lily go without. My friends told me I was ruining my future. My parents said I was just enabling Rachel's bad choices. None of it mattered. Every time Lily smiled at me, every time she curled her tiny fingers around mine, I knew I was exactly where I needed to be. I didn't know then what Rachel was doing, or if she'd ever come back. I didn't know the battles that lay ahead. All I knew was that this little girl was now my world, and I was going to protect her, no matter the cost. And so what started as just a week became 10 years, 10 years of love, sacrifice, and building a life together. I had no idea the storm that was coming, but when it came, I was ready to fight. The first year with Lily was the hardest year of my life. I was barely 18, working part-time at a grocery store and tutoring kids in the evenings, but it still wasn't enough. My days started before the sun came up and ended long after midnight. I'd wake up to Lily's cries, feed her, change her, rock her back to sleep, and then head to work with barely any rest. My body ached constantly, but I kept telling myself that she needed me more than I needed sleep. Rachel was nowhere to be found. Her phone number went dead within a week, and the apartment she'd been living in was empty when I went there. No forwarding address, no note, nothing. It was like she had disappeared from the world. I kept hoping maybe she'd call, just to ask how Lily was doing, but the days turned into weeks and the weeks into months with no sign of her. Some of my friends didn't understand why I was doing this. They'd tell me over coffee or during short visits, "Claire, you're so young. You can't raise a baby on your own. You should think about adoption. Give her to a family that's ready for them." I always shook my head. They didn't see what I saw when I looked at Lily. They didn't understand that this wasn't just about keeping her safe. It was about loving her the way her own mother couldn't. My parents weren't much better. They told me I was enabling Rachel, that by stepping in I was allowing her to run from her responsibilities. They said Rachel would never grow up if I kept cleaning up her messes. It hurt to hear that, but I also knew deep down that leaving Lily with strangers would break me in a way I could never recover from. Money was always tight. Some weeks I had to choose between paying the electricity bill or buying diapers. I learned to live on instant noodles and peanut butter sandwiches, so Lily could have formula and fresh baby food. I picked up extra babysitting jobs whenever I could, sometimes taking Lily with me in her carrier. People would stare, wondering why a girl my age had a baby. I let them think whatever they wanted. One evening, after another long day, I sat on the couch holding Lily against my chest. She was only about 8 months old then, her hair soft and wispy, her cheeks round and warm. I started humming to her, an old lullaby my mom used to sing to us, and her tiny body relaxed instantly. She stopped fussing and pressed her face into my shoulder. That was the moment I realized she knew my voice. Out of everyone in the world, I was the one who made her feel safe. That single moment made all the exhaustion, all the fear, and all the sacrifice worth it. No matter how hard it got, I knew I wasn't letting her go. The years slowly began to feel less like a struggle for survival and more like building a real life. By the time Lily was 3, I had landed a steady job as a medical receptionist at a small clinic. The pay wasn't amazing, but it came with consistent hours, health insurance, and just enough stability for me to finally breathe. I managed to rent a small but safe 2-bedroom apartment, Nothing fancy, just clean walls, warm light, and a quiet neighborhood where kids could play outside without work. Lily thrived in that little space. She loved coloring on the kitchen table while I cooked dinner, filling the air with her constant questions about how the world worked. She was curious about everything: why the moon followed us at night, why birds didn't fall from the sky, why pancakes tasted better on Saturdays. She started calling me Mommy, without me ever telling her to, and the first time she said it, I froze. My heart swelled and ached all at once. I wasn't her biological mother, but in her eyes, I was the only mother she had ever known. Still, there were nights when, after she was asleep, I'd find myself staring at the ceiling wondering about Rachel. Was she alive? Was she healthy? Did she ever think about the baby she left behind? Some nights, I hated her for walking away so easily. Other nights, I missed her, missed the sister I used to know before her choices tore our family apart. It was a strange, uncomfortable mix of emotions I carried silently. In the back of my closet, I kept a small cardboard box. Inside were the few things Rachel had left with Lily: the hospital ID bracelet from the day she was born, a faded pink onesie, the baby blanket Rachel wrapped her in that night, and a handful of photographs from those early days. I told myself I kept them, in case Rachel ever came back. Maybe one day, she would ask about Lily, and I'd be able to hand her this box, proof that she had once been here, proof of what she had walked away from. When Lily was 5, she started kindergarten. I was nervous about letting her go out into the world without me there to guide her every moment. But she adjusted quickly. She made friends, loved story time, and would come home talking nonstop about the things she learned. One afternoon, her kindergarten teacher pulled me aside at pickup. She told me Lily was one of the most polite, thoughtful, and happy children in the class. "You've done an amazing job with her," she said warmly. I could barely hold back tears. In that moment, all the sleepless nights, all the sacrifices, all the doubts, they were worth it. I had given Lily a life filled with love and safety, and that was something no one could take away. It was a quiet Saturday afternoon when the knock came. I wasn't expecting anyone, so I opened the door cautiously and froze. Standing there was Rachel, 10 years older than the last time I'd seen her, but instantly recognizable. Her hair was perfectly styled, her clothes expensive, her nails manicured like she'd just walked out of a salon. She smiled like we'd spoken yesterday, not like she had vanished from my life for a decade. "Hey, Claire," she said casually. "I'm finally ready to be a mom now." Her words didn't make sense at first. My brain stumbled over them. Ready now? After 10 years? I stood there in shock, my hands still on the doorknob. Lily peeked from behind my legs, clutching the hem of my shirt. When Rachel's eyes landed on her, she bent down with an exaggerated grin. "There's my girl," she said, holding out her arms. But Lily didn't move. She pressed herself closer to me, her small hands gripping my shirt tighter. Rachel straightened, brushing off the awkwardness like it didn't matter. She pulled a bag from her shoulder and started taking out gifts: a shiny pink doll, a box of expensive chocolates, glittery hair clips. "These are for you, sweetheart," she said brightly. Lily looked at them but didn't step forward. She'd never been the kind of child who warmed up to strangers, and that's exactly what Rachel was to her, a stranger. Trying to hide my unease, I invited Rachel in. She made herself at home instantly, settling on the couch like she'd never left. She talked about her new life, her career, her fiancé, her travels, all with the ease of someone recounting a vacation, not a decade-long absence from her child's life. That evening, I decided to make dinner. I thought maybe a meal together could at least keep things civil. But the moment we sat down, Rachel took over the conversation, leaning toward Lily with a constant stream of questions and comment. She barely looked at me. When I tried to gently explain something to Lily, Rachel talked over me, her voice louder, more insistent. At one point, Lily asked me to pass her the bread. Rachel cut in before I could speak, saying with a bright, almost possessive smile, "You can ask me, honey. I'm your real mom." The words hit me like a slap. I watched Lily freeze, her little face confused, her eyes darting between us. I wanted to scream, to tell Rachel that being a real mom isn't about biology. It's about showing up, every single day, through sickness and sleepless nights, through scraped knees and homework tears. But I stayed quiet, swallowing my anger for Lily's sake. That night, after Rachel left, Lily crawled into my lap without saying a word. She didn't ask about the gifts or the candy. She just buried her face against me and whispered, "I don't want her to take me." My arms tightened around her. I didn't know what Rachel was planning, but I knew one thing. I was going to fight for my daughter. Rachel's visits became more frequent after that first afternoon, but not in the way I had hoped. I'd suggested we take things slow, letting Lily adjust at her own pace. I thought maybe with time and boundaries we could find some middle ground. But patience was never Rachel's strength. Within a couple of weeks, she started pushing harder. One evening, she showed up unannounced again, all smiles, but her tone was sharper this time. Claire, I can't keep doing this little by little thing. Lily is my daughter. I want her to live with me now. I tried to stay calm. Rachel, she doesn't even know you. We need to think about her feelings. This is a big change. Her smile dropped. I'm engaged, she said suddenly, as if that explained everything. His name's Jonathan, and he's amazing. He wants a complete family, me, him, and Lily. He's ready to provide her with everything you can't. My stomach twisted. So this is about what he wants. Rachel leaned back like she was in control of the conversation. It's about what's best for her. You've done, okay, I guess, but you were never supposed to keep her this long. You should be glad I'm finally stepping up. That was the moment I realized she didn't see me as Lily's mother at all. She didn't see the years of scraped knees I'd bandaged, the countless bedtime stories, the fevers I'd sat through without sleeping. To her, I was just a placeholder. When I told her I wouldn't hand Lily over, she snapped. You're just the babysitter, Claire. I'm her real mom. Her words stung in a way I can't describe. Babysitter? Babysitters get paid. Babysitters go home at the end of the night. I had given up my 20s, my education, and most of my freedom to make sure Lily had a safe, happy life. We argued for nearly an hour, voices rising until Lily came into the room with wide, frightened eyes. I stopped immediately, pulling her into my arms. Rachel muttered something about fixing this and stormed out. I hoped she'd cool off, that maybe we could talk again with less anger. But a few days later, I came home from work to find an envelope taped to my door. My hands shook as I opened it. Court papers. Rachel was suing for full custody of Lily. My legs felt like they might give out right there in the hallway. My heart pounded so hard it was almost painful. I had always feared she might come back and try to take Lily, but some part of me had hoped the years we'd spent together would count for something, that the world would see I was her mother in every way that mattered. But now it was clear. Rachel wasn't just back. She was coming for my daughter, and she was willing to drag us through a courtroom to get her. The day after I got the court papers, I sat at my kitchen table with a calculator and a stack of bills, trying to figure out how I was going to fight this. Lawyers weren't cheap, and my savings account barely had enough to cover a month's rent, let alone legal fees. But this wasn't a choice. This was about Lily. I would have sold the clothes off my back if it meant keeping her safe. I found a family law attorney named Mark who agreed to meet with me after. I walked into his office clutching the court summons like it was a weapon. I told him everything, from the night Rachel left Lily in my arms to the gifts and candy she'd recently brought to win her over. Mark listened carefully, then said, "We're going to need every piece of evidence showing that you've been her primary caregiver. Everything." That night, I went through every drawer, every box, and every folder in my apartment. I found the hospital discharge papers from when Lily was born, with Rachel's name listed as mother and mine as emergency contact. I pulled up old text messages where Rachel promised she'd be back in a week. I printed bank statements showing the cost of Lily's school supplies, doctor visits, and clothing, all paid by me. 10 years of receipts became my armor. When the first court date arrived, I felt like I was stepping into a nightmare. Rachel sat at the other table, looking polished and confident, her wealthy fiancé beside her. Her lawyer painted me as someone who had kept a child from her mother, making it sound like I'd hidden Lily away out of spite. Every word made my stomach twist. When it was my turn, Mark stood tall and began laying out the truth. He showed the judge the hospital records, the texts, the financial proof. He explained that Rachel had no contact with Lily for a decade, while I had been her sole provider and guardian. Through it all, Lily sat quietly in the back, too young to understand all the legal arguments but old enough to feel the tension. That evening, after court, I found her sitting cross-legged on her bed, hugging her favorite stuffed bunny. She looked up at me with wide, tear-filled eyes. "Will I have to leave you?" she whispered. The question broke something inside me. I sat beside her, pulling her into my arms. "No, baby. I'm going to fight with everything I have to make sure you stay right here." She buried her face in my shirt, and I could feel her small body trembling. In that moment, the fear I'd been carrying turned into something stronger, determination. This wasn't just a custody battle. This was a fight for our family, the one we'd built together from nothing. And I wasn't going to let anyone tear it apart. I thought the hardest part of this custody fight would be facing Rachel in court. I was wrong. The real heartbreak came when my own parents chose her side. It happened a week after the first hearing. I went over to their house hoping for support, thinking maybe they'd finally see how serious this was. Instead, my mom shook her head and said, "Claire, blood is blood. Lily belongs with her mother." Her words hit like a punch to the chest. "I'm her mother," I said quietly, but they didn't hear me. Or maybe they didn't want to. My dad chimed in, saying Rachel had turned her life around and deserved a chance to make things right. That was when all the old feelings came flooding back. Growing up, I'd always been the one to follow the rules, get good grades, and take on responsibilities without being asked. Rachel was the wild one, reckless, but somehow always forgiven. If I messed up, it was a lecture and disappointment. If Rachel messed up, it was she's just young, she'll learn. I'd spent my whole life cleaning up after her, and now it felt like I was doing it again. Except this time the stakes were Lily's future. In court, my lawyer called a surprise witness, someone from Rachel's past. A former roommate took the stand and spoke about the months after Lily was born. She told the judge how Rachel spent her nights clubbing, drinking, and using drugs while claiming she was figuring things out. Hearing it out loud made my stomach turn, but I was glad the truth was being spoken. Rachel, of course, didn't flinch. When it was her turn to respond, she put on her most sympathetic face and said it was all youthful mistakes, that she had been lost back then but had grown into a better person. She even glanced at the judge with watery eyes, as if she were the victim in all of this. I wanted to stand up and shout that a decade of absence wasn't a mistake, it was a choice. But I stayed seated, gripping the edge of the table so tightly my knuckles turned white. Then the judge made an announcement that caught both of us off guard. Due to the conflicting accounts, he was ordering a psychological evaluation for both Rachel and me. It would include interviews, home visits, and assessments to determine who could best meet Lily's emotional needs. I agreed without hesitation. I had nothing to hide. My home was stable, my life centered around Lily's well-being. Rachel, on the other hand, hesitated, just for a second, before nodding stiffly. As I walked out of the courtroom that day, I realized this wasn't just about facts anymore. This was about proving, in every possible way, that I was the only real parent Lily had ever known. And if that meant letting strangers pick apart my life, so be it. I wasn't afraid of the truth. The custody evaluation started a week later, and from the moment Rachel's fiancé walked into my apartment, I knew exactly what kind of man he was. He smiled for the evaluator, shook my hand politely, but when he looked at Lily, his gaze wasn't soft or affectionate, it was calculating. He asked her if she liked big houses and fancy vacations, like he was dangling prizes instead of trying to know her as a person. Lily, shy and uncomfortable, clung to me and barely answered. During his visit, he made little comments about how a child like this deserved better opportunities, as if the love and stability I had given her were somehow worth less than the size of a bank account. The evaluator kept taking notes, and I silently prayed she was seeing what I saw, a man who saw Lily as an accessory to Rachel's new life, not a daughter. Not long after, I learned something that made my blood boil. Part of the evaluation required checking living conditions, and Rachel had claimed she and her fiancé had a permanent residence ready for Lily. But through a mutual acquaintance, I found out she'd been staying in a rented condo that was barely furnished, and before that, she'd been moving from place to place. The stability she bragged about didn't exist. When we returned to court, my lawyer didn't waste time. During cross-examination, he pinned Rachel down with simple, direct questions. In the 10 years Lily has been with Claire, did you ever send financial support? No, she admitted. Did you ever call to speak with her? Another pause. No. Did you ever send letters, birthday cards, or gifts? She shifted uncomfortably. No. Each answer felt like a small victory, but also a knife to the heart. Hearing it out loud, her complete absence from Lily's life, made me want to cry and scream all at once. Then it was my turn on the stand. My lawyer asked why I hadn't told Lily more about Rachel over the years. I swallowed hard, feeling my throat tighten. Because she was a child, I said softly, and children deserve to feel safe. I didn't want Lily wondering why her mother didn't want her, or thinking she wasn't good enough to keep. I wanted her to feel loved every single day, without that shadow hanging over her. For a moment, my voice cracked, and I had to look down to steady myself. The courtroom was silent, except for the faint scratching of the judge's pen. That day, something shifted. I wasn't just defending myself anymore. I was showing the court exactly who Rachel was, and exactly why Lily belonged with me. And as much as it hurt to lay our lives bare like that, I knew I was closer than ever to the truth finally being undeniable. The final hearing felt like it lasted a lifetime. I sat at the table, my hands gripping the edge so tightly my knuckles ached, listening as the judge reviewed every piece of evidence, every testimony, every report from the psychological evaluation. My heart pounded with each pause in his voice, the silence stretching like it was meant to test me. Finally, he looked up. Based on the evidence and the best interests of the child, he began. This court awards full legal and physical custody of Lily Bennett to Claire Bennett. The biological mother, Rachel Bennett, will have supervised visitation as arranged by the court. For a second, I didn't move. I was too afraid I'd misheard him. Then his words sank in, and a wave of relief crashed over me so hard it almost knocked the air from my lungs. I turned to look at Lily, who was sitting quietly beside Mark, my attorney. Her eyes widened when she saw my face, and I nodded just once. Rachel didn't take it well. She shot to her feet, her chair screeching against the floor. "You stole my life," she shouted, her voice echoing through the courtroom. "You stole my daughter." Her fiancé grabbed her arm, but she jerked away, glaring at me like I was the villain in her story. I didn't respond. There was nothing left to say. The bailiff stepped in, guiding her toward the exit as she continued to spit accusations over her shoulder. The judge's gavel struck once, sharp and final, signaling the end. Outside the courthouse, the cool air hit me, and suddenly I was shaking. My knees felt weak, and I sank onto the steps, pulling Lily into my arms. For the first time in weeks, I let the tears fall freely. She clung to me, her small hands gripping the back of my jacket, her face pressed into my shoulder. "It's over, baby," I whispered into her hair. "We're okay now. We're safe." My voice cracked, but I didn't care. All that mattered was that she was staying with me. We sat there for a long time, letting the noise of the city fade into the background. The chaos of the courthouse, Rachel's shouting, the months of tension, it all felt distant now. There was only me and Lily, the way it had been for 10 years, the way it would stay. After a while, she leaned back just enough to look at me. Her eyes were still watery, but she was smiling softly. "You've always been my mom," she said, like it was the simplest truth in the world. Those 5 words undid me. I hugged her tighter, feeling my heart swell in a way I couldn't put into words. I didn't care about biology, about the arguments, about the court battles. She was mine, not because of paperwork or DNA, but because of every single day we'd shared, every moment I'd chosen her over everything else. And now, we finally had the rest of our lives to keep choosing each other. Months passed after the verdict, and life slowly began to feel normal again. The court dates stopped, the tense phone calls ended, and Lily and I settled back into our routines. School for her, work for me, quiet evenings together in our little apartment. The weight I had been carrying for so long was finally lifting. One afternoon, Mark, my attorney, called to check in. During our chat, he mentioned something that made me pause. Rachel's engagement had ended. Apparently, her ex-fiancé found out more details about the custody ruling and wasn't pleased to learn she had lost full rights to her own daughter. Whatever image Rachel had painted for him had crumbled, and just like that, he walked away. I should have felt bad for her, but I didn't. It wasn't joy I felt, either, just a sense of quiet justice. She had tried to use Lily to build her perfect family, and now she was left with nothing to show for it. Not long after, Rachel reached out to me. Her tone was softer than before, almost pleading. "Claire," she said over the phone, "I've been thinking, maybe we can start over. I could come around more, spend time with Lily without all the court stuff hanging over us." I didn't raise my voice, but my answer was steady. "Rachel, you made your choice 10 years ago. I'm not reopening that door." She tried to say more, but I ended the call. There was no point in letting her back in just for her to leave again. I'd learned that lesson the hard way. A week later, I pulled the small cardboard box from the back of my closet, the one I had kept all these years, filled with Lily's baby things. I sat on the floor and went through each item: the faded pink onesie, the soft baby blanket, the hospital bracelet. I had kept them thinking maybe Rachel would come back and want them, that maybe one day she would be the sister I used to know. But I realized I didn't need to hold on to those what-ifs anymore. I packed everything neatly and donated it to a local shelter for young mothers. It felt strange at first, like closing a chapter I'd been stuck in for too long. But as I walked out of the shelter, I felt lighter, freer. That box had been a symbol of hope for a version of Rachel that didn't exist, and now it was gone. That evening, Lily and I baked cookies together. She stood on a little stool beside me, giggling as flour dusted her nose. The kitchen was filled with the smell of warm sugar and the sound of her laughter. I looked at her, my daughter, in every way that mattered, and felt the deep, unshakable truth. We were a real family, not because of blood, but because of love, and no one could ever take that from us. Do you think Rachel truly deserved another chance with Lily, or was Claire right to keep the door closed for good? Share your thoughts in the comments. I'm curious to hear your take. And if you love stories filled with real emotions and tough choices, hit subscribe and tap the notification bell so you're here for the next one.